Hello, and welcome to another edition of our regular podcast on the wonderful world of recycling. Recycle, don't be a waster. In today's podcast, we are going to, we're going to cover if the number one, if you had to list the absolute number one item that everybody should try to recycle, that's easy to recycle, and that really we have no excuse not to recycle, that is what we will cover today. So getting straight into it, and this applies to Australia, but pretty much everywhere. If you absolutely have to recycle one item, what should it be? I'm going to say aluminium. Aluminium, or aluminum, of course, as North Americans call it, it's a very common material. It's incredibly useful. It's very versatile. It's and I suppose those are the reasons why we use it in so many areas. From soft drink cans to tinfoil, aluminum foil to cake containers, these sort of things. Aluminium is sort of everywhere in the modern consumer environment. And I think that it has many pluses. I think as a packaging material, clearly it has some negatives, which we'll get into, but it has so many pluses. It's conducts electricity. It's very clean to use. It's light. It is non-toxic. It doesn't break down into stuff such as microplastics, and it is a cost-effective, very malleable material that can be used in a huge range of usage. So fundamentally, it is probably the easiest material outside maybe of cardboard. Potentially, you could even argue it's more beneficial to recycle aluminium, but it is probably the easiest material to recycle, or one of them. Cans, soft drink cans can easily be put into your commingle bin. They can be recycled in that manner. And I think even back to the very first recycling project that I was part of was in primary school. I'll not tell you how long ago that was. Let's pretend it was only 15 years ago, we'll say. But the very first recycling project I was part of was involved in recycling aluminium cans. We would crush them. The kids really enjoyed the crushing, that process, and then you would recycle them. So it's a super easy system. It's almost, unlike plastics, it's almost completely recyclable indefinitely. You can keep recycling aluminium over and over again, so it doesn't require additional aluminium to be added. And it can be just reused and reused, and it does not deteriorate. So really, we have no excuse whatsoever to be throwing aluminium cans or those sort of items into the trash. That's the first thing we'll cover as to why it's so easy. But I think what's even more interesting is why it's so important. Why is it so important to recycle aluminium? Well, I suppose firstly, we don't want to use more aluminium. We don't want to, and in this instance, we'll go a little bit into the process as to how aluminium is manufactured. So aluminium is made from a material called bauxite through a process called smelting, where bauxite looks very little, it doesn't look like the finished product at all, and then smelting it is basically heating it to very high temperatures and forming it, and that takes an awful lot of energy. The actual volume or amounts of energy it takes is sort of mind-boggling. I've read in numerous areas that in Australia alone, smelting of bauxite, which for most people would be an afterthought, is equivalent to about 10 to 11% of our total energy usage in this country. And when you think that's to make items such as drinks cans and equivalent, it is amazing. So that's 11% we estimate of energy usage, but it's also even higher in greenhouse gases, where we estimate it's around about 15 to 16% of greenhouse gases emitted. So when obviously anybody it's almost impossible to hide away from the media nowadays talking about emissions targets and greenhouse gases and reducing emissions and these sort of things. So clearly, recycling aluminium is a really, really good place to look. If you can, if we improve our recycling processes, if we can strip out more and more aluminium from waste and recycle it, it's almost a no-brainer. It's something that's so obvious that we should be doing. To even put it into comparison, the facts I have here are to recycle aluminium using you can recycle 20 aluminium cans using the same energy it would take to manufacture one new can. So it's almost a 1 to 20 ratio. And, that really shows that if we can just focus on that, A, we're saving huge amounts of money for the economy. B, we are not throwing perfectly good materials into the trash and into landfill where they'll just be wasted. And thirdly, we're saving huge amounts of emissions, which, makes all, our targets and all these sort of things much easier without massively disrupting our way of life and economy. So that is almost, to me, it's almost it's a home run or a slam dunk. And you might be able to tell I've been watching a little bit of American sports recently with those terms. So I think those are the things that we really would hammer home. I think if you're making the argument for recycling, it's almost like you can't really argue against it. One area where I will say that we are much worse at recycling is in the concept of aluminium foil, tinfoil that we use for packaging foods. When you're cooking items, roast dinners, etc. We use them in huge proportions, and fundamentally, aluminium foil is the same product, give or take, as an aluminium can, just less thick, etc. But I would say that our efficiency and our outcomes in recycling aluminium foil are much, much worse than recycling the cans. I think there's a real misunderstanding as to how you can recycle them, where you can recycle them, and even if they are recyclable. So, I'll cover that briefly now. I think it's really good to know that in your commingle bin in Australia, that's the yellow bin for bottles and cans, etc., you can place your clean, and we do say it's clean, your clean aluminium foil. So basically, it is the same material fundamentally as cans, and so that's why it can go into the same bin. The guidance is to scrunch it up. If you just throw in small pieces of aluminium foil, tin foil, it is unlikely to get recycled because the machinery will find it harder to pick it out. But if it's clean, you scrunch it up into a ball and just throw it in unbagged, so you don't put it into a garbage bag, into your commingle bin, the yellow bin, and it will be recycled just alongside the cans. So it's a super simple way to do it, and it is something that I think a lot of people are not aware of. One other nuance we'll cover here is that you get into the area as to, is it actually tinfoil? Is the material in your hand actually aluminium foil, or is it mixed with plastic, as in a packaging? Almost think of a crisp packet. And, are you doing the right thing by, how do you know which is which and which should you put in the recycling bin? So as a rule of thumb, they say, and I've read this on a couple of different websites, if you try to scrunch it up into a ball, if it stays in the scrunched shape, so if the aluminium foil stays scrunched up, that is the great likelihood is that is aluminium foil, tin foil. If it expands again and moves away from the scrunched up shape, it's almost certainly a mixed material with plastic potentially. So maybe a plastic covered with an aluminium cover, which again we don't want to include in this category and should not be put into the recycling bin. So yeah, I hope this has helped us. I think if we are pushing recycling project, aluminium is certainly, it's an easy discussion, it's an easy argument, it's clean, it's not that unpleasant, whereas obviously getting to food recycling and things can be, which can put people off. And I think, you think back to when you were at school, you probably enjoyed recycling the cans, so there's no reason not to be doing it now. Okay, so we will leave it there. I think in some of our future podcasts, we'll also cover, some of these easy recycling. They're not hacks, obviously, they're just common sense in many regards, but we will cover more of these and hopefully, dispel some disinformation and try to answer some of the more common questions that we hear at Waster. So we'll leave it there. Have a great week, and of course, recycle. Don't be a waster.